666.
As we've discussed, I'll rehash it, but just to try and add a little more context from the perspective of Mohammed bin Salman, President Joe Biden will visit Saudi Arabia July 15, 16, when he will meet with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. For the Biden administration, at least, this signals that Mohammed bin Salman is, in terms of optics anyway, officially in from the cold. I thought it'd be worthwhile to just take a look, because this caps quite a diplomatic 18 months for Mohammed bin Salman MBS, a period in which circumstances, strategy, tactics, and the overwhelming imperative, we've seen this from the U.S. side, of national interest on the part of numerous foreign countries that have resulted in MBS transitioning from essentially a defensive diplomatic crouch in the post-Khashoggi period to becoming a regional leader and a global player. This has been an interesting transition. So let's look quickly at the timeline. 18 months ago, January 2021, Saudi Arabia hosted the Al Ula conference that ended the dispute with Qatar, which had begun in 2017. Later in 2021, in December, MBS visited Qatar to sort of affirm the Al Ula conference and that things were back on track intra-GCC in terms of communication and cooperation. That same month, Saudi Arabia hosted Emmanuel Macron, president of France. In March 2022, Boris Johnson came to town. In April 2022, Recep Erdogan came to town for the first time since 2017. Again, all meeting with MBS. Also in April, Saudi Arabia put in place a new leadership council to represent Yemen and at the same time reached the truce with the Houthis, which has since been extended. During this period, any number of Arab heads of state met with MBS or came to Saudi Arabia. That includes President Sisi of Egypt, Prime Minister Makani of Lebanon. So now MBS is on a tour: Egypt, Jordan, Turkey, Greece, and Cyprus. When he returns, he'll convene a GCC Plus event to feature President Joe Biden, which will include all 6 of the GCC heads of state, which, as we noted, GCC is back in sync, communicating. They've been coordinating and pre-planning for this visit, so they're very much in sync. Included with the GCC heads of states will be heads of state representatives from Iraq, Jordan, Egypt, and probably Morocco. I mentioned this last time. And by the way, MBS probably would have visited Iraq on this current tour if a government was in place. It's a little bit in disarray in Iraq, not particularly useful at this time to go there. The notable aspect of this current tour is it is essentially a king-making exercise. King Salman is in declining health. I mean, this is an opportunity for MBS to show his diplomatic chops and take an active leadership role in the region. And this is especially the case because he has prioritized efforts to align policies among this increasingly strong Arab bloc. So, of the Arab states, so for example, of the Arab states scheduled to meet with Biden in July, Saudi Arabia will now, as I mentioned, be very much in sync with the GCC partners. Is increasingly close, is sort of refreshing and updating relations with Morocco after a little rough patch. But MBS will have just met with the Egyptian and Jordanian heads of state who are in town for that meeting. So they'll have their ducks in a row, and no small part due to Saudi Arabian MBS leadership. So it's quite a change from just 18 months ago. I should add here, apart from this perceived strategic advantage for Saudi Arabia to increasingly triangulate its foreign policy between the United States, China, and Russia, there was significant goodwill engendered during this period. You notice when I went down those heads of state that were coming to town or meeting with MBS, Macron, Boris Johnson, Recep Erdogan, I didn't mention a couple others. And that's because in February 2019, Xi Jinping hosted MBS in China. And in June 2019, Vladimir Putin very publicly shook hands with MBS at the G20 summit in Osaka and then came to Saudi Arabia to meet with him October 29th. I add that because apart from this tour that MBS is going on, but we look at, and Saudi Arabia is making choices about this triangulation, is hedging its best for the U.S., and we can't go in depth there. But I think it's useful to point out in terms of how goodwill is perceived, that while MBS was out in the cold in the U.S., he was hosted in China by Xi Jinping, and Vladimir Putin came to town to meet with him. When we ask the question about why Saudi Arabia is hedging, there's not only strategic and tactical and the economic reasons, but I think there's also some personal things here. But anyway, the point being is it's been an extraordinary 18 months for MBS, and like I said, from a sort of a defensive crouch at the beginning of 2021 to a point here where he's doing a tour and will be meeting with the U.S. president, and in a very strong and publicly active leadership role for the Arab world and for the GCC states in that region in general.
There's also a very strong economic, and you mentioned it, but there's a very strong economic reason for MBS's visit to each of these three countries. Really just a lot of Saudi money going into Egypt, Jordan, and Turkey, and each had its own reason to warm up to Saudi Arabia to host MBS. Jordan's economy is in a weak spot, needs investment. Egypt's economy, food prices are soaring, inflation is out of control, needs deals with Saudi Arabia. Turkey, same deal, soaring inflation, big visit from MBS, a thaw in Turkey-Saudi relations. It really has been a remarkable 18 months. It's I think very smart that you put it that way, because you need to take a very broad lens to see it that way. And 18 months seems like a really long time in today's yesterday is old news environment. And yeah, I think very well said, Mr. Wilson. It has been quite the turnaround.
Yeah, it has, and there's a bit of good luck involved. I mean, I mentioned circumstances, strategy, tactics, and the imperative of national interest in terms of other countries. You're exactly right. I mean, Egypt has really been hit hard by grain prices. Jordan's been struggling, and Turkey, obviously, we've talked about Turkey, is hit by inflation and a sagging economy, and of course there was the unofficial boycott for most of 2021. So yes, you're right. That's a spot on. These countries have significant interest in having strong economic, and having Saudi Arabia being involved financially with their economies. It's a good thing, and Saudi Arabia has some money to spend. It's especially important for Egypt, and and we'll talk about later, I think, in Ayala. The Egyptian relationship is exceptionally important to Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia wants to make sure that Egypt is stable and is able to be a cooperative and strong working partner. Egypt is very important to Saudi Arabia.
Richard, you and I both really love looking at the photos from the Saudi press agency of really just anything, because they have 50 or 100 photos that come out every day, and it's a really good lens into the kingdom. Not a very well known lens into the kingdom. You and I see it every single day. The photos from I do, yeah.
You're an amazing troller of that source.
I live there. But it was really interesting seeing the body language of the visit of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to Jordan, to Egypt, to Turkey. I mean, in Turkey, Erdogan and MBS hugged. They embraced after MBS got off the plane. It was just very warm. You could see that. It wasn't very formal or stiff. I mean, there was obviously the pomp and circumstance that always accompanies such a state visit, but it was very warm, and it sort of was indicative of where things are with the relationship. I'm not sure we'll see that level of warmth when President Biden visits visits Jeddah, July 15th through 16th, but just really interesting to sort of look into that. And yeah, I mean, very good point. 18 months can really change a lot in the world, as we all have seen.
Yeah, it has here.